Welcome along to Special Stage 9. Peter Whitten, it's another fortnight we get to chat about rallying. It's a great time to be alive.
It sure is, Luke. And in most parts of the country, I reckon this autumn weather is just perfect for rallying.
I think so. We were recently at the Rally of the Heartland about a week and a half ago now, and that was a great event. And yeah, there's plenty more to come over the next little while. Welcome along to any new listeners who've joined us here for the first time on episode 9. Make sure you take a look at our back catalogue as well. There's plenty of episodes back there for you to listen to. Some of the interviews are timeless, and you can listen to them at any time, and they still have perfect relevance. That's the case with my favourite interview we've done with Malcolm Reed. Peter, it's flown by these first 8 episodes.
It has, yeah, Luke. We started early in January, I think it was, and before you know, here we are in May. So things are going well, and it's good that we're really starting to get the flow on with events now, and people can really get their teeth into the rallying.
For sure. We've added the episodes onto YouTube as well. So if that's the way you want to listen to your podcasts, feel free to jump onto YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and you can do that, whether you wanted to do it via a TV or whatnot while you're doing some things around the house. Feel free to do that as well. Rally of the Heartland is probably the first port of call, Peter, for us to chat about. We were across there doing some work, and we had the Max cases there as our valued sponsor of the podcast with us as well. So we got to use that product, and the event was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And the Max case, which we stored our camera gear in during the event, it was really useful, and it just goes to prove what a good product it is. I mean, it keeps it protected both during your travel, obviously, and out in the stages when you're getting blasted with rocks and stones and things like that. So we can certainly recommend the product for photographers and also for mechanics and people to carry their tools in.
The event was won by Tom Dermody in a beautiful red Ford Escort RS 1800. His winning margin was really, really big, and it just shows the attrition that was the case at the event. And there was, I think, 5 stages that were over 60 kilometres in length, and it was just a really, really tough event, wasn't it?
It sure was, yeah. It started on Friday afternoon with 3 prologue stages. And the rally was based at Burra, which is about 2 hours north of Adelaide, pretty much at the base of the Flinders Ranges, I guess you'd say, and really is Aussie sort of outback country, getting into that sort of country anyway. And there were prologue stages on the on the Friday afternoon, but once the rally got underway proper on Saturday morning, it really got into it. And I think 434 kilometres of competitive driving or something like that. And yeah, as you say, 2 stages were 60 plus Ks, and 2 night stages, and then the first stage on Sunday morning, 72 kilometres, so massive stages. And we did see quite a bit of attrition because of that.
That 72 kilometre stage was quite amazing to witness, because it's clearly such a long stage. You've done a stage longer than that before, but I can't imagine there's too many other 70 kilometre stages that you've done, even with your rallying experience.
No, probably not. I mean, my longest were in the 2003 Alpine Rally. I think we started the night stages that year with a 70 kilometre stage, and then the last stage of the night was 125 kilometres. And from memory, we started that at 11:30 at night and didn't finish until about 2 a.m. So it was a massive stage. But as you say, we don't get long stages like that too much these days, and it really did. I guess because they were night stages, the dust really was a problem. Stuart Bowes was the first car on the road for the night stages in his big Mercedes 450 SLC, and he had a dust-free run, but those behind him really did suffer, and there were some guys who had some issues because of the dust. But I think more so the big gaps in that event were more so because of the length of the rally and the problems that guys had with their cars, whether they went off the road or whether they had mechanical issues. It really did play a part.
I think those long stages definitely do have a place in the sport moving forward, but at what cost, I guess, because road closure officials, particularly on long stages that span through the day and through the night, are tricky to get. And even just closing a section of road for 70 kilometres is a fair effort by the organisers. So congratulations should go to them, and hopefully that continues at the Rally of the Heartland.
Yeah, absolutely. The officials out on that event were well worthy of the winner's trophy, that's for sure, because they put in many long hours of of standing by the side of the road. But as you say, I think the long stages do have a part still in the sport. Of course, in these days, dust becomes an issue, even though it always was. I mean, the speeds are greater now. The distances and the times between the cars maybe are less than they used to be. But I still feel that we need to have long stages. We just need to come up with that balance, as you say, whether they're held at certain times of the day when the dust maybe is not such a big issue. And of course, long stages at night can create that problem because the wind drops away and there's just no clearance of the dust.
I know there's some regulatory issues in terms of the ARC, but a nice 50-kilometre stage in the ARC would be good viewing, wouldn't it? Watching the split times as they come through.
Oh, it sure would. And I think the drivers would like it themselves. I mean, we all know that you can get big gaps on any stage and any length, but to have a long stage, and they've done that in the WRC, where particularly in Rally Mexico, I think they've had a 50-kilometre stage, El Chocolate, over the last few years. And even though the gaps can still be quite small, it can create issues, whether it's a puncture or a mechanical problem. So I think the endurance part of rallying is something that we are missing a little bit at this stage, particularly in events like the ARC and some of those state championship events. And to bring that back would certainly be beneficial, I think, to everybody.
Dale Moscatt's our special guest on our special stage podcast. Funny, we're using the word special a lot. And Dale talks about his program and what he's doing with Rakan Al Rashed is his driver for this season. And he's up to a lot of cool things overseas and doing some WRC events, doing some warm-up events, and also working towards the 2024 Dakar Rally. I chatted to him clearly about all things and also about the lack of co-drivers, which is what an article features on our website today as we record this on Wednesday. It's a funny topic because there's so much work that can be done and should be done of growing our sport, but the co-drivers often get forgotten when we talk about developing.
You're probably right, Luke, and certainly there's no more qualified person in Australia than Dale to speak about this. I mean, he's a two-time Australian rally champion co-driver. As you say, he's competed all around the world at the WRC, in the European Championship, in Dakar and raid events and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, your chat was very interesting in that he talks about the lack of co-drivers and the opportunities.
It's one thing about being a co-driver and learning pace notes and all that kind of stuff, but there's got to be the opportunities to progress from a state championship to a national championship. And it all comes into the same thing where we've got to make the progression from state rallying to national rallying, and it's all part of the process. So stick around and enjoy that chat with Dale. Rally Portugal this weekend. It's the first of 7 gravel WRC events in a row. It's only one of a number of times where there's been that many gravel rallies in a row. 2011 was the last time. The top WRC guys will be pretty well used to gravel by the time the 6 months are over, Peter.
They will be, yeah. And I guess for most of our listeners, probably in Australia here and in New Zealand as well, I mean, gravel is our thing, and most of us much prefer to watch the WRC on gravel and tarmac. So to have 7 events in a row is fantastic. I guess from a diehard point of view, it's just a shame the championship doesn't finish with a gravel rally in the UK like it used to, but instead the championship now goes to Japan at the end of the year.
Or even a gravel finale in Australia, like there was for a few years there. The top 4 guys,
nice.
Yeah, the top 4 guys, Alvin Evans, Kelly Rovanpera, Oit Tanak, and Thierry Neuville are all vying for that championship. Of course they are. Do you think one of them is going to stand out in Portugal this weekend and really take the fight to the leader, who is Alvin Evans?
I don't know. It's road position will be the key again, won't it? I mean, Evans is starting first on the road as the equal championship leader with Sebastian Ogier. The weather conditions this weekend, I just had a look before, it looks like being 20 degrees and fine each day. So there will be gravel clearing. So Evans, Rovanpera will be disadvantaged on the first day. Neuville is probably the best position of those drivers, starting 4th on the road. Tanak, who knows? He seems consistently unhappy with the performance of the Puma. I think much to the dismay of the M Sport Ford team, but I think the car has shown that it's very fast. So he could easily be the man to catch, but so could other drivers. Danny Sordo may eventually come to grips with that Hyundai. Estepeca Lappi as well. He's shown tremendous pace this year. So it will be up in the air, but I think maybe Neuville or Tanak is the pick for me.
Mm-hmm. Chris Meek returns to the WRC as well in what was Craig Breen's seat for the Hyundai Portugal team. What's really, really good is that he's got James Fulton alongside him. So James getting back into the seat after losing Craig not very long ago. It's great for him to be back into the co-driver's seat. And for Chris Meek, he's a top-class driver, and I'm really, really keen to see where he lines up in the WRC2 scenario.
Yeah, it's great for James, isn't it? I'm sure that will be a lot of apprehension for him going into the event, but yeah, the team are keen for him to get back involved, and as he is. And I guess one of the sad things about this event too is the fact that Danny Sordo, I think, was always scheduled to drive for Hyundai Rally 1 team in this event, and Craig would have been driving the Rally Portugal in the Hyundai Portugal Rally 2 car. So it would have been interesting to see how Craig went in that category against your Gus Greensmiths and those sort of guys. So, but no, good to see Chris Meek back, and he's over 40 now and probably past his best, but he's always been very fast.
You have a top three for me, Peter, of who you think will be the winner of Rally Portugal and also the other podium place getters?
Look, I think probably Thierry Neuville is my number one pick, Luke, but I always hesitate with Thierry because he always seems to make silly mistakes when the victory is within his grasp, as it did in Croatia. And I hope that's not the case for him this time. I think he really does deserve the victory. I think he'll probably win, maybe Tanak second and Lappy third, but I never write off Calais Rovanpera. He's had probably an indifferent start to the year in a lot of terms. Probably hasn't been as fast as he may have liked to have been, but he'll certainly be up there again. How about yourself?
I agree with Thierry Neuville. I think the mistake in Croatia won't happen 2 events in a row. He'll get the win. Esa-Pekka Lappi will be second and Rovanpera will be third. I've picked a Hyundai one too, but they're often really, really strong on rough gravel, which Portugal has a lot of. So the Hyundai's as 1-2 for me. The Forest Rally as well is coming up as part of the Australian Rally Championship. This is the last episode that we'll have to that trip to Western Australia. We unfortunately won't be heading across there, but there's a good entry list of cars that will be fighting for the win in the top 5 and podium places.
Yeah, there sure is. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't had a close look at the entry list over the past 2 or 3 years in the last few days, but 12 AP4 Rally 2 and G4 cars, which is maybe close to being a record in Australia. So that's fantastic to see. And the fans in Western Australia are certainly going to be in for a treat.
The momentum's still kicking, isn't it? Because there's quite a few guys who you perhaps wouldn't have thought would go across to Western Australia. The Maguire brothers, you've got Bodie Reading who's heading over as well. So it's the most expensive event in terms of getting over to Western Australia, and the time you have to spend to go over there is very, very big. And it really shows the momentum is continuing, and I think it's a great sign for the rest of the season, which is mainly on the East Coast and is much easier to get to.
Yeah, you're right, but it is important that the championship goes to Western Australia. I mean, if only to support those competitors and spectators who follow the series, but also because we've got quite a few WA guys with Daniel Gonzalez and Alex and Peter Ruller who are competing in the full ARC this year. So it's great for them to have a home event and to showcase their sport in front of their sponsors.
I really enjoyed going to the Forest Rally last year, so it's going to be a bit of a pain to miss it this year, but we'll be following closely and giving as much coverage as we can. We'll be following along and having our ear to the ground in terms of what's happening over there. So keep things on rallysportmag.com if you're looking for some content before the weekend and also after it as well. Of course, it's always lots to talk about when it comes to a national championship round.
And what about your predictions, Luke? I mean, Lewis Bates is starting first car on the road, and obviously there's a bit of gravel sweeping in WA as there always has been.
Yeah, I wrote down my WRC predictions knowing that I would bring them up, but I haven't looked at the Forest Rally in terms of what a prediction might be. Oh, it's hard to go against Harry Bates, but then again, it's been hard to go against Harry Bates for the last 4 or 5 events, and he's either crashed or had mechanical issues in those ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Harry is in a bit of a rut, isn't he? I mean, yeah, he's had the mechanical problems, but he's crashed in the last 2 events, and I'm sure that will be weighing on his mind. Maybe Nathan Quinn is the man.
Maybe.
That Hyundai i20 G4 has really come on in the last couple of events, and he's found some real strong speed from it. Starting third car on the road, they'll have a nice swept line in front of him if that car can be reliable again. I wouldn't put it past Quinny to take a win.
I'm going to sit on the fence here, but I think Lewis is going to be closer to Harry and Nathan than what we might expect. So maybe it's a three-way fight between the two Bates boys and Nathan Quinn, because in reality, Lewis has been to WA, I think, almost as many times as Harry has. The roads don't really change year to year, so it's a perfect opportunity for a close fight at the top.
Another one too is Luke Whitten. He's starting fourth on the road, and he's got the brand new Ford Fiesta Rally 2. Again, with the road position, that could be really advantageous for Luke. And with Malcolm Reed sitting beside him, as he did in Tasmania, he showed some real pace down there. The other one too is Troy Dowell, who probably arguably struggled with the Skoda on his first event in the car in Tasmania. Had a couple of spins or off-road excursions, but again, with that road position, you never know. And if it is dry, like we probably expect it will be over there, Troy could be another one to actually upset the apple cart.
What's really interesting for me about Luke Whitten is the fact that he went to Tasmania and competed at Rally Launceston in the Skoda, and it's almost like a switch was flicked and he was right on the pace. It was his first stage wins in the ARC back in March when we went to Launceston. And maybe it's something to do with the car. Maybe the difference between the Skoda and the Ford is much bigger than what we might expect. And Luke feels more comfortable in the Skoda, but that's something that's going to be interesting when we get to Western Australia.
Yeah, the other thing too to consider there, obviously the car change was one thing, but it was the first event that he had Malcolm Reed, who's a vastly experienced co-driver, obviously, and maybe some changes to the pace notes or the way that Luke's driving or attacking the stages has made a big difference, and maybe that will transfer over into the Fiesta this in 2 weeks as well.
Lots to talk about, and we'll cover as much as we can on the website in the coming weeks. The Orange Rally was conducted at the weekend by AMSAG. Peter, you did the report on that one. Did you want to cover off on that very quickly?
Yeah, obviously the AMSAG series, for those who probably aren't really up to speed with how it works, it's run outside Motorsport Australia, so they run their own insurance and their own governing body, I guess.
Yeah, through the AASA.
Through AASA, correct, yeah. The AMSAG Rally was won by Josh Redhead in a Mitsubishi Lancer. I think Chris Stilling was second in his Lancer, and Sean McAloon third in a Ford Escort. So held in dry, dusty conditions, as you would expect at this time of year. A successful event, yeah. So full reports on the website.
Very cool that a nice early Group A Lancer got a rally win in Australia. I do have a soft spot for those early Group A cars, and it's probably a podcast topic in itself, talking about the 323, the legacy, the early Lancers. We might have to put that one in the bank.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
New Zealand Rally Championship is this weekend. Again, a great number of AP4 and R5 specification cars will be competing over there. Hayden Paddon is the unbackable favourite, but Shane van Gisbergen is in the Audi AP4 car, and he may well be the second best on the entry list.
Yeah, it could be. And as you say, Hayden is the unbackable favourite, having just come back from a rally in the Canary Islands last weekend, where he finished second on tarmac. So he'll be in good form, obviously. Ari Pettigrew finished second at the Otago Rally back in April, so he'll be quick again in the Holden Barina. But yeah, as you just mentioned, Shane van Gisbergen, he's driving Dylan Turner's Audi AP4 car, so his progress will be keenly watched, that's for sure.
He's one of the first guys to go from an R5 car to an AP4 car as well, so it'll be interesting to see where he compares in terms of seconds per kilometre against Hayden Paddon and Ben Hunt from when he competed last year. So the difference in speed between AP4 and R5, although Eli Evans has done so in the past, this might be the best indication of where the R5 and AP4 cars sit alongside each other.
It could be, yeah. And having seen a little bit of testing footage from Shane driving that Audi, over the last couple of weeks. It hasn't seemed to have taken him long to get up to speed. And with a program of 4 events in the New Zealand Championship this year, much to the dismay of Australian rally fans, I guess, it will be very interesting to see how he goes. And can he tackle Hayden? Let's wait and see.
One more thing before we go that I've got on my list here, Peter, is we've got a few secondhand models that have come onto the website. By the time this podcast goes live, we'll have almost a dozen secondhand models in our web shop at $80 a piece. So if you want to scroll through those, have a look at some rally models, see if you want to add 1 or 2 to your collection, jump on our shop and see if you wanted to grab those. Is there anything on your behalf, Peter, that you want to bring up?
No. Just quickly, Luke, just to remind people of the Dust Trails podcast series that we've got. The last one we had up a couple of weeks ago was with Peggy Bourne on the anniversary of, the 20th anniversary of Possum Bourne's death. That was a fantastic chat with Peggy, and I'd really encourage people to get on and have a listen.
That's it. Subscribe, search for Dust Trails, and enjoy that one on our website. Peter, thanks so much for your time. Look forward to following the New Zealand Championship this weekend and the Australian Championship next weekend. So it's a good time.
Thanks, Luke, and let's get into that Dale Moscatt interview.
Dale Moscatt, welcome along. Thank you so much for sparing some time out of your morning in Portugal, I believe. How are you?
We're in Porto, so let's say midway up the coast. So for those that don't know Europe all that well, Portugal's on the western side there, under the UK, I guess you could say, and that's surrounded by Spain. So yeah, Porto is probably 2/3 the way up the coast. Yeah, so we did a rally here probably 5 or 6 weeks ago now in Algarve, which is right down on the south. That's where I first did the WRC here back in 2009, I think it was. So we did that a couple of months ago for testing, went home, did a couple of other things and other events, then came back and we did Rally Aberbrera, which is very, very close to here, around the Amarante area, and actually used a couple of the stages that we will use this week in the WRC. So that was our test. And obviously it's not worth flying home for 4 days. So yeah, stayed up here to do all the recce schedules and planning and go out and see a couple of mates that were testing during the week. It's very, very busy here. It's quite different to Australia in the lead up to the rally. Obviously testing's free up here for the Europeans. So they were all about doing multiple day tests here, there and everywhere. So yeah, we sort of scouted around and went to a few of them and caught up with some people and had a look at the cars and set up some things like that along the way.
Thankfully for you, COVID's more or less out of the way and you can travel around the world like that, which is pretty cool. Do you enjoy traveling around the world like that? And is it good fun to be doing it again?
Look, I do. I think COVID was terrible for us financially, no question. And it sort of made us evaluate a whole heap of different things. We've started another business and other things since then because, I probably had too many eggs in one basket as far as the career is concerned.
Yeah.
But it did, it was very strange. We went for months without doing events, and certainly didn't do many at all. And it felt very, very strange because I've been doing this full time now for 20 odd years, I guess, and started traveling overseas. I think it was 2002 was the first time we went overseas. So yeah, it's a fair amount of time doing that one thing, and you just kind of get swept up in it all. And it's like anyone's career, I guess. You just forge away, and before you know it, time's passed pretty quickly. So it has been a long time. The traveling bit, it's kind of strange because it's rare to be based in Australia and competing globally, I guess, so regularly. So it's quite funny. Most of my career I've spent traveling by myself because I'm coming from down here to compete in China or compete in the WRC, and most of the time those drivers are from Europe or somewhere else. So I think you have to enjoy traveling, otherwise you wouldn't have put up with the amount of time I spend on planes and in lounges and hotels and all those sorts of things. It's not always as glamorous as it seems. But in saying that, I still enjoy it. So yeah, I don't have any problem. It's quite common. We were only at a test a couple of days ago, and
Mm.
George Linemay and James Morgan were discussing, oh, you're back up here, and James had just come to Australia for a
Yep.
wedding, and he said,
Mhm.
I can't believe you do this all the time. But for me, I just sleep on a plane on the way to Dubai, and you
Yep.
wake up in the morning and take a night flight all the time. And yeah, you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning in Dubai, and then I'm just pretty much one flight from anywhere. So
Yep. Mhm.
for me, yeah, I go to sleep on the plane rather than them going to sleep in their bed up here. And then we both leave home in the morning, or I leave Dubai in the morning. And not everyone could do it, I know,
Yeah.
but whether I've adapted or it's just easier for me, I'm not really sure.
It's tricks of the trade, I guess. Yeah, there's lots of things that you pick up over so many years, and the amount of days that you spend overseas and in hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff. It must be tricky at times with a young family at home too, because depending on the jobs that you are doing, it might be more European based rather than Australian based. I guess how many days would you have out of Australia each year?
Well, last year's probably the first year we got back into it, and we didn't do a lot overseas last year because it was still a bit up in the air, and
Yeah.
we couldn't get any contracts sorted when COVID was on because we weren't sure what was happening. So last year, yeah, as I said, I said yes to as much as I could because we had to try and start to make back what we'd lost during COVID. So we did 22 events last year, which is insane. I guess for each of those events, the ARCs are a little bit better now.
Mm.
Most of them are that sort of repeat format. You can do a lot of copying and pasting of notes and things like that. So the prep on some of that isn't as big as it used to be if you're continuing on with the same driver.
Mm.
But most of the time, at the level that we compete at, preparation is just as important as is
Mm.
the job in the car on the event. So there's a lot of work goes into the preparation side of it. I think, yeah, last year I'm not sure exactly how many days we spent away, but I have a calendar which I obviously make my own calendar up, and the coloured events are different colours for yellow for Australia, and we've got
Yeah.
this brown colour for the Middle East and the rally raid style of things, and
Mm.
so it's all pretty much coloured. I guess looking at that, there's probably a third of the time would have been at home,
Mm.
two-thirds of the time away. And in that time at home, I'm not sitting on the beach or any of that sort of thing. Last
Yeah.
year, the new business we started, when I'm at home, I'm either preparing for rallies or I'm at the factory at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I don't sleep much, so that's okay for me. But I'll
Yeah.
go there and do that, then cram rally stuff into the afternoon and the evening. So it was pretty busy last year. We've gone back to probably half and half of overseas events this year
Mm.
versus Australia. I think I can't remember. This might be the ninth or 10th rally this week. So we've fitted a fair bit in already. I think there's 4 and 5 weeks at the moment. So that's a little bit too hectic. So the preparation has to start very, very early for those.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think calendar wise, there was, we've just taken on the Forest Rally again next week
Yeah.
to help Steve Maguire out. So that'll put it to 23 events if they all went ahead this year. So
Mm.
yeah, I probably wouldn't plan for that many normally.
Yeah.
But if they can flow into each other like these are up here,
Mm.
it does make it possible. Yeah.
The travel makes it hard, I guess, in between events as well. Getting into some detail
Yeah.
about, yeah, your current role. Sorry to interrupt there. We want to talk about Cody Crocker and Evgeny Novikov and the Petr brothers at another time, and I'm sure there's lots of stories that you can share about those guys. One question I
Yeah.
do have, though, is do you know what Evgeny's doing at the minute?
I actually got a message from him
Oh, yeah.
probably a month ago, four or
Okay.
5 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say we stay in touch all the time. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what he's doing. He did take on a role as like a driving tutor for a little while. I know he's competing in a couple of Finnish rallies, mostly with Russian people.
Yeah.
But he did a little bit of that driver training type stuff and some rallycross hill climbing type stuff in Russia. But yeah, I haven't heard much of him, and he certainly hasn't been competing regularly,
Mhm.
which is a shame.
Yeah, he's very
But
fast.
certainly that's a complete another topic for another
Mm,
time because
exactly.
I was only talking the other day with someone about this, and I said if you were to put that race of champions style of thing where you put all different drivers from all disciplines in cars they've never driven before,
Yeah.
I'd near on put my house on him. He's the way he adapted so quickly to cars and driving when things were broken and all sorts of things like that. The feeling he had in the car and the way he'd modulate the brake, and it was just next level. And I'm talking about a kid that was 17 to have the skills that he did at that age with the amount of experience he had was just off the charts. So, yeah, as I say, it's probably a tales for another time. With the family these days, my daughter just turned 10 and my son's about to be 12. So they understand, and Dad's always been doing this. So it's not, they've grown up with it. But it's very, very easy for me to, there you go, there's a message from now. It's very easy for me to keep in contact with them these days. When I first started, for instance, going overseas to China and things like that, it was just my wife and I, and I'd be away for 10 or 12 days and you wouldn't really get to touch base at all because, your mobiles didn't work over there and it was just all too hard. So if she heard from me, it was probably because something was going wrong. So we lived with that and dealt with that. But these days with FaceTime, I've already spoken to both the kids this morning. They finished school this afternoon and they'll drop me a text and I'll give them a call when I've got a chance. And yeah, most days I would speak to them at least in the morning and the evening. So it is a lot easier than it used to be. I probably know more about their day than a lot of parents do that have long office hours. So
Probably a good point. As you said before, you're in Portugal for Rally Portugal coming up this weekend with a Saudi driver by the name of Rakan Al Rashed. Can I pronounce it right? Is that correct pronunciation?
That's pretty close. That's as good as I do anyway.
Yeah. So he doesn't have much experience. So in terms of going with him versus going with somebody who has much more experience, how does your role as a co-driver, I guess, change with, I guess, what you have to do in the right-hand seat?
Look, firstly, I guess the role is different. You're right, with every driver. So I've got drivers that obviously employ me for all the experience to try and go as fast as they can to work on their pace notes. There's all different reasons that you would have me in the car, I guess you'd say, or have anyone in the car for that reason. And some people it might even just be for fun. So Rakan's, I got a message. So the team Print Sport is based in Finland, very, very big team, very professional team. I ran with Carl Kruder in Estonia with them a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And Aero, the boss, there's a lovely guy. We were on really well. And he called me at the end of last year and said, look, if you remember the guy, so Rakan was my teammate at that event in Saudi.
Yep.
And Aero said, Hugo, his former co-driver, is moving on to another role. We're looking for someone and you're perfect. What we need for this fit is, and yes, it's the experience of all that. It's also to remember that Rakan's a businessman. He's very busy in what he does with his work life. This for him is his side gig. He's not coming here trying to be Sebastian Ogier or beat Sebastian Ogier, or of course he wants to do the best that he can, but he understands how much time he can devote to this. And within that, then you set your expectations, because the top guys here and the factory guys and the Oliver Solbergs in our category and people like that, they're with competition, testing, developments, all sorts of things that they do, they would spend up to 200 days a year in the car, and they're getting somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 kilometers worth of seat time. So that's competitively testing and in the actual events themselves. So you can't ever think that you're going to come and compete against that, even if you were just doing a full WRC2 roll of 7 events. So let's say 350 kilometers per event, you're just nowhere near the amount of time they're spending in the car. And the easiest way I relate that to people is, you and I type on a keyboard when we sit down and do emails and things like that. If you think that you're going to be able to type as fast as a receptionist that does it all day, every day, you're kidding yourself. You can do it, but it's going to be full of mistakes.
Totally.
And in the rally cars, there's no resets. So the only way to be as fast and consistent as that is seat time. So that was the goal with him, is where do we sit? How many events can we do? And where can we make improvements? So yeah, we sat down and looked at the pace notes and all those sorts of things. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got to make it fun as well. So
Of
as I
course.
said, this guy's here to enjoy himself, have fun, and do the best that he can. So he can't badger him all the time and hammer into him about doing this and doing that. It's
Yeah.
working on what his strengths and weaknesses are. And I think as a team, we're doing quite well with that. By the time we did a rally in the sort of north of Finland the week before Sweden to get some time in the new car. So we had the brand new Skoda RS. So that was new for him, and obviously new co-driver and all sorts of different things. So we did the test event before Sweden, Rally Sweden. By the end of Sweden, we'd sort of halved the gap that he was behind the top guys by the end of the event. And then following on to these two events here, he's sort of down to about that 1.5 seconds. Well, I think the last power stage in a Barbarera rally last week, which was the Amaranti stage we're going to do this week, there was still a fight for the lead with Chris Meek and a couple of the local guys, and everyone was still going hell for leather, and we were only, I think, 1.4 seconds a kilometre off that pace. So we know that's a very good pace. So to be going at that sort of level is pretty good. I mean, that's considering where he would be to someone at home, he'd certainly be, knocking on the door of podiums in the ARC. So
Yeah. You mentioned the Skoda Fabia, the new one, the RS Rally 2. You've sat in all the Skoda R5 cars. Quickly, what makes that one better than the other ones? It's a new model altogether, of course, but
yeah.
how's the progression gone from a Skoda point of view, and can you tell the difference?
Yeah, you can. There's been a couple of facelifts over the time. Like, the old Skoda S2000 was an absolutely amazing car. The chassis in that car, and if you speak to Chris Atkinson, we've had this discussion a couple of times.
Yeah.
He compares it to any of the world cars. Like, the chassis was absolutely fantastic in that car.
Yeah.
R5 sort of took a tiny step back when it first started, with a lot more standard parts and things like that on the car. The evolution of that through time has been fantastic. I'm sure if you looked at the times that we're doing now, or certainly the top guys are doing now versus a WRC car of not that long ago, that's how fast they are.
Yeah.
This new car, to me, so there is a new engine and you can feel the difference with the engine. Very smooth and very torquey, and the rev range seems very good. So certainly for those customer drivers, Rakan being an example, absolutely perfect car for him.
Yeah.
Very, very drivable. We've always found the rear of the Skoda very compliant. And again, I think the top drivers will probably get the best out of them, very close performance to each other in all the different cars. Certainly from all the people that I've sat with in all the different cars, the Skoda seems to be the one that seems to be easiest to drive and to get to that sort of 80%, 90% level. And yeah, very, very tunable, obviously. We find that we can raise the ride height on an afternoon loop, especially places like here in Portugal, or where you get in Canberra or Forest Rally where it's quite deep ruts and things.
Yeah.
You can raise the car globally and still not lose any feel and precision in the car, which is fantastic, because obviously you need to do that to protect the car, to make it through to the end. So having a car that's able to do that is very good. And the other thing, I was talking to Harry Bates about this, with the finish on these cars these days is absolutely unbelievable. Like the, door gaps and the way the slider windows close, and, you would look inside this car and assume that it's mass produced by robots, like a, beautiful car you buy for showroom is. They are just such a lovely car. All the safety foam and all the safety cells and all around us, is millimeters around everything, perfectly sculpted, and very, very clever guys that have spent a lot of time evolving and developing these R5 cars.
Now, English-speaking co-drivers are often the ones to guide Middle Eastern drivers in the WRC. I think names like Michael Orr and Chris Patterson come to mind. Why
Yeah.
why do English speaking co-drivers, native English speakers, direct those guys a lot of times from the co-driver's seat?
For me, from my side, a lot of the feedback I get, and the boss Aero here, we watch a lot of onboards
Yeah,
and do
yeah,
a lot of homework together. And he likes the way Australians don't have a very strong accent, if you want to call it that. I mean, we
yeah,
all obviously have an accent, but
yes.
the Australian accent isn't very strong, and we tend to speak quite clearly. So over the years, I've obviously done so many events with foreign drivers that I've adapted my style slightly in the way that I call notes. So there's a big emphasis on things that are important, and I do tend to speak quite clearly. So that's something I think from my side that I work on quite a lot with these sorts of people,
Mhm.
because you have to. Rakan's English is very good, so we weren't going to have an issue in any of that. But for example, he had a Portuguese co-driver before this, and I've
Mhm.
been studying the onboards from last year in the lead up to this event, and I flick back sometimes to look at what was he saying there, look at the pace notes, because it over time, obviously, you get used to that, and Chris got used to that with Stefan Prevost.
Yep.
Some of the words that he was saying, you and I would listen to and say, "What was that?" But that
Mhm.
became normal for Chris.
Yep.
So you can mold and adapt, certainly. But I think from the English speaking thing, obviously writing and reading back notes in English can be much shorter as well. If you compare it to Spanish and certainly Norwegian, when you speak to those guys, they say they would have, 30, 40% or even more worth of pace notes if you were to
Mhm.
translate it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of those things combined. Yeah.
All you've got to do is watch a Carlos Sainz on board to see or to hear how much work Lewis Moyer had to do back in the day.
I do. I use that analogy quite regularly,
Yeah,
actually.
it's amazing.
Sounded like Lewis Moyer. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, off-road stuff. You're doing lots on that front as well. Glenn Brinkman's the guy you're going to go with next year at Dakar. It's a long, long road to get to Dakar for a newcomer like Glenn to the off-road side of things. Where do you think he's at? Obviously, you've done Dakar before. There's 7 or 8 months to go. Is he near enough on the path?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like I love those style of events. Obviously, I started rallying when they were longer, tougher events, if you want to call it that.
Of
But
course.
it's not taking anything away from what we do now. It's all different and different styles. But I've always enjoyed those longer endurance style events, and I think like I still feel like I'm very young and I'm still fit and healthy, and I think they suit me. I don't sleep much, and I've got all these things that I don't have to eat. So quite often, my wife will ring and say, "What do you want for dinner tonight?" Oh, I don't know. What did you have for lunch? And then I remember I hadn't even had breakfast either. So a lot of people struggle with a lot of the things that happen in Dakar. So, yes, ideally, you want to be fueling your body all the time and sleeping as much as you can and all these sorts of things, but it never goes to plan.
No.
So, there's a lot of preparation you need to do for those events. And the same thing on the driving front. Obviously, it's like tennis and squash with normal rallying that you and I are used to, and certainly that Glenn's used to. So, yeah, he came to me a few years ago and said, I guess getting a bit bored sounds terrible, but
Mm-hmm.
he'd been doing the same events and same series and stuff like that for a while, and he was after a new challenge. So we discussed the off road stuff, and he's a good mate, and we like camping with the boys and motorbike riding and stuff like that. And we said, off road might be for you. Let's
Mm.
go and try this. And we bought Bruce Garland's D-Max that he'd done the Dakar in, and it wasn't to do Dakar in, it was just to see the style of the car and style of events that suited Sunraysia Condo and some events that we
Yeah.
could do at home.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, toe in the water exercise, loved it, thought it was awesome. So came up with the idea that he would like to do Dakar as a bucket list thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we basically sat down and formulated a plan for him, and the idea behind it was we got a Can-Am built in Australia, and that's left-hand drive, side-by-side experience, all that sort of thing. We can use that for 2 years in the Australian Off-Road Championship. So build, seat time, those cars are very specific to drive, and with an engine in the rear and so much rebound out of the rear with fuel and all those sorts of things in them. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you need to learn. Going in and just doing Dakar for your first event ever in that type of vehicle, that type of terrain, you're going home right near the start and you've wasted a whole. So yeah, our plan was to build his experience in the side-by-side. Then the navigation is obviously, well, these days is the biggest part of Dakar or rally raid events.
Yes.
So the plan was to do Morocco, which we did at the end of last year, and Abu Dhabi Desert Challenge the start of this year, because between those two events, you cover off about 80% of the terrain and navigation that you're going to come across during Dakar.
Yep.
So on a limited budget, if that's how you can spend your money, that's basically what we could afford to do, is tick off as much as we could in as few events as we could. And that was the plan with that. So yeah, Morocco has a lot of those undefined trails and rocky things like that. There is some dunes as well, but I should say, unfortunately, the year we did it last year, there was almost no dunes. And then Abu Dhabi is the opposite. It's 90% dunes. And, you know, if you're bucket listing as well, that's they're the biggest, most beautiful dunes in the world. The resort you stay at is, you know, probably the best resort I've ever stayed at in the world. It's a fantastic place to stay. So if you can, you know, have those good experiences along the way as learning and building up that bank of knowledge, then, the plan's gone fairly well so far. Glenn's commitment to it is massive. Anyone that knows him knows he goes all in on things. So, yeah, he's a very busy guy, but he still manages to cram in way more than I would ever expect. He's sending me information before we go to do events that, you know, normally I would get there and a driver would say, how many stages have we got? And, you know, he's
a co-driver in a driver's body almost.
He is, yes. Yeah, he's a very well-organised person. I think you need to be successful in business and everything else he's done in his life. So, he's coming along really well. The driving side, I've no question he's up to it. The navigation side, there's still a lot to learn from both sides as well. Like I did a course after Morocco last year. I stayed off my own bat and went with a very experienced French couple training in the dunes in Morocco, which was essentially, they were the only ones that have the electronic road book, which is how it's all done these days. And they have that system with the previous year's Morocco stages programmed into it. So we basically go out there and do the course, and obviously you have time to stop and study. Okay, why did they put this information in? What did they mean by this? What happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? So normally on an event, you just get thrown in at the deep end. You're got another car come past you or something like that, and you get to a tricky navigation thing, and obviously the driver doesn't want to slow down because there's another car there, and then are you following a car in the wrong direction? They're put off because they've just come past you. The places all these things happen, there's a pattern to it.
Yeah.
So to have the time to sit there and study it slowly was really, really key. I'd not had the chance to do that before. So that was, invaluable experience to go and do that. So, trying to share some of that information with Glenn, good experience.
Lots to learn, of course. Moving towards some Australian stuff, Dale, you're a two-time Australian rally champion. I believe you're only the second person to win those two titles with two different drivers. Do you still have dreams of winning another Australian Rally Championship title?
Not really. Look, it's nice. All those things are nice. Last year, I was absolutely ecstatic for Anthony. Like, he's one of my best mates. We've been racing a lot over the years and spent a lot of time in China and traveling together and things like that. Coming down to the last round, someone rang me doing maths on things, and I said I'd be happier for him to win it than for me to win a third. It sounds silly, but it's a nice little extra thing. But I think it's great for other people to win it and share that stuff around. He's spent so long in the sport and done so much for the sport. It was great to see a good reward for him like that. So I'm not actively chasing it. No, I think I don't want to sound disrespectful, but there's a big shortage of good co-drivers in Australia.
That was going to be one of my next questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great the work that Rhiannon and Alex are doing on that side of things. I haven't had time to do anything like that, so it's a very hard thing to do. From a driver's point of view, obviously, it's pretty easy to watch on board. It's getting a bit better with co-drivers with things like that, but I think somehow we need to break this issue where people won't ask questions. It's very, very hard to give someone advice. They need to sit there and look at things honestly. And, I see some of the onboard stuff and think, oh, wow, like, I wouldn't drive and commit to that. But like anything, it's practice. We need to give people opportunities to do that. I think there is certainly more pace-noted events now in the feeder series coming through. So I think if we can get some more people into that and get some more people building up that experience on pace notes, obviously that's where the key is. I probably wouldn't suggest trying to chase a career of it like this. There's very few people that have, managed to be able to do this. There's almost no one based in Australia. Obviously, Glenn McNeil made a very good career, had a very good career, but had to move overseas, obviously, at the peak of that. And Rhiannon's obviously done the same now. Yeah, I still enjoy the ARC. I am doing the event next week in WA with Steve Maguire. So I don't mind helping out and doing that in between things, but we don't have a role basically at the moment that suits what I want to do. I wouldn't mind taking on a full-time role, working in a team and doing all the other extra things in and around it, but just co-driving at the moment, there's not really enough work there to do it full-time.
The thing about the talent pool, particularly for co-drivers in Australia, I guess it stood up when Harry Bates selected Coral Taylor as his new co-driver for this year. With the greatest respect to Coral, she's an outstanding co-driver and has an incredible resume. And of course, she's the right person for Harry to choose. But not going for a younger person like what Cody Crocker did for you and what Glenn McNeil was chosen for a few roles early on in his career, that really highlights the talent pool. What is sort of a next step for a co-driver who wants to get into the Australian Championship and maybe do what you're doing and go overseas? It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, look, you need, as I said, you need to put the ego thing aside firstly, and just go and do as many events as you can. It's as simple as that. And I find I learned a lot from all the drivers about my role as well. So yeah, trying to just do as many events as you can and seeking out those people. As I said, Rhiannon and Alex are great and doing it now. So I'd certainly recommend going and doing their school and finding out all the information, all the things you need. The biggest thing from a co-driver's side of view is, it's so full on. You can't be one of these Facebook lunatics that needs to spend half your day, thinking about what other people are thinking. It's a very tunneled role. I do very little of that while I'm away on events. Luckily, I don't have to, because I find the level of concentration you need through the entirety of the week is massive. So yeah, you need to work out what your role is and whether you're happy with that and that's what you want to do, or do you just want to go to events and have fun. Firstly, be honest with yourself and see what you want out of it and what you want to do within the sport, how far you want to go with it. I didn't know when I first started that this is what I wanted to do for a living or would end up doing for a living. It sort of just did grow on me, but I made a very conscious effort to start to go to the ARCs with, at the time it was Brett Middleton. So I'd go to all the events with him and we'd do recce plans and look at the recce's and look at the rallies. And I studied and knew the events before I even started co-driving in some of the events. I knew them fairly well already, and I'd sit and I'd get onboards off Brett and I'd get onboards off Coral and all different sorts of different people and studying that sort of thing. And it wasn't as easy to do then. These days, it's very, very easy to do your own homework. So, anything in life, you get out of it what you put in. If you're not going to invest the time, trying to improve yourself and trying to learn, then you can't expect to be any good at it. So
It's an interesting one at the minute, and yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of co-drivers there, but it's just getting that opportunity and putting the hand up to do the right thing, of course, because we know the quality's there in terms of talent across Australia. So I'm sure it'll come.
look, it's hard to. I mean, I get offers from New Zealand as well, and talk to people in New Zealand that are struggling to find that top level co-drivers,
Yeah.
someone that they can take the next step in improving their pace notes, perhaps, but also just having 100% confidence in what's coming from the other side. So yeah, we had a discussion, obviously, when I was in the Bates' team for a couple of years there, and COVID was happening, and we said, okay, so what happens if John gets COVID, Anthony gets COVID, I get COVID? Like, what's the plan B with all these drivers? And yeah, it did highlight the fact that yeah, we need to do a bit more work to, I think, help and encourage those people. There was some talk with Adrian Coppin about, I said I was happy to put some time and energy into maybe giving some form of prize to a co-driver rather than just the drivers,
Yeah.
And help and mentor some people through with that. So yeah, that may be the next step. My problem at the moment is finding enough time for myself and family, let alone anyone else. But yeah, certainly down the track, I think that's something we need to put some energy and even for Motorsport Australia, put some resources to, because you can't have one side of the car working at an elite level without the other. Yeah, we'll see which path we can head with that.
Last of all, Rally Portugal this weekend. You've done it before, like you said. Are you looking forward to the challenge? And I guess, is the weather sunny out that window to your right-hand side?
It is at the moment. It's been drizzling a couple of days. I went to a couple of the tests this week. Lappy's test was awesome. It was like 28 degrees, and we're actually sitting in the truck with the air conditioning on between runs and stuff, because it was actually really warm that day. And 2 days later, I think it said it was 11 degrees or something in the car, but we were up Ponta de Lima, up the top of the hills in the clouds, raining, and yeah, we're hoping the event's going to be sunny.
Yep.
But the problem with that is obviously then it's the dust. So it doesn't take long to dry up in this sort of area, and the roads soak the rain up very, very quickly. So we'll wait and see what conditions bring. It's a very demanding event. Like, there's huge amount of road sections in between. So we have a part afternoon of recce today, then we have 2 big full days of recce, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday morning shakedown. Then we go down to Coimbra for a ceremonial start and some poster signings and all that sort of thing on the Thursday evening. We stay in a hotel down in Coimbra, and the Parc Fermé is down there. So we actually start from Coimbra and head out to the Friday loop. And the Friday loop essentially is the whole day without any service. So there's a tyre fitting zone and some stuff like that during the day, and some regroups and that. But I'm just going to see there's an updated itinerary in the bulletin just came out. But yeah, 120 Ks competitive on that first day without a service. So that's pretty full on. And at the end of the day, we've got about 250 Ks worth of liaisons to a super special, and then back to the Parc Fermé overnight. So like massive long day.
Yeah.
And that sort of continues through the whole weekend. It's very spread out, this event. So yeah, I think it's 1,200 total kilometres over the weekend.
Do yours and Rakan's taste in music match up to put through the headsets on the way back to service?
The Skoda is a very comfortable, nice car. So if there's any car that you're going to sit in on the road section, yeah, it's probably that one. So yeah, I'm happy enough with that.
Good stuff. Dale Moscatt, thank you so much for your time. It's a busy few days coming for you, but best of luck. Hope it all goes well, and look forward to seeing your names hopefully near the top of the Rally 2 field, but we'll see how things go.
It's a pretty hot field here. I wouldn't be holding my breath on that. Yeah, we're actually just discussing that at the test the other day.
Yeah.
There genuinely is probably 15 guys that could win a stage.
It's amazing, isn't it?
yeah, going off road position and all of that, there could be even more that could win a stage. And realistically, yeah, there's probably 8 or 10 guys that would be definitely within that podium range. So yeah, it's going to be great to watch the fight. Like a lot of those guys are friends of mine, and I quite enjoy. Like I'm still a rally fan,
Yeah.
as much as I'm a competitor.
Mhm.
So yeah, on the road sections in between, when you get a decent enough gap on a highway up here, which you do, yeah, we do scroll through and have a look at how everyone else is going. So it'll be interesting to watch.